Hey guys, welcome to Macaroni and Cheese Heaven. I'm going to do this quick video on how to make my homemade macaroni and cheese. Every time I make it and bring it anywhere, everybody asks me how to make it, and they think it's super difficult or super time consuming, and it's not. It takes about 15 minutes, bakes for about 15 minutes, and then you can serve it. So in a half an hour, you can have macaroni and cheese that is way better than that stuff in the box. So I'm going to start out there with a half a pound or a half a box of regular elbow noodles. You can use cheapo noodles, it doesn't matter, they're all pretty much the same. That's a half of a 2-pound box there I just put in. And I'm going to let these boil probably almost till they're al dente, right about al dente, because they're going to cook a little bit in this pan. In this pan I'm going to go ahead and coat it with some olive oil Pam, because you do not want this stuff sticking. It'll take forever to get it out. And then basically our ingredients are going to be 8 ounces of Velveeta, 8 ounces of shredded Colby Jack cheese. Yep, that easy. And then of course the secret weapon that I'm going to show you here in a second. I'm going to pop a little salt and pepper in there. What makes it so unique and creamy and flavorful and not so gooey is the use of about 8 ounces of heavy cream. Heavy cream makes all the difference in this. If you don't use it, it'll come out real gummy and gooey. And hey, if you like it that way, just leave the heavy cream out. If you like it real creamy and you know, just the perfect texture, go ahead and use the heavy cream. And don't be afraid to use a little extra heavy cream too if you like it real creamy. Just remember that if you use too much heavy cream or a lot of heavy cream, it'll actually reduce the flavor of the cheese. So we got that in that pan on the back burner there. That's about on a quarter. And just going to let that kind of heat up. You don't really want to cook it or really heat it up fast because you don't want the heavy cream to separate and you don't want to burn the cheese. So these noodles, I'm going to keep them on a fairly high heat. You can see in there they're pretty dry. I'm not going to use a lot of water because what you want is you want a real dry, almost sticky noodle, because that dry sticky noodle is going to suck that cheese and that cream up and give it a really nice texture. You don't even need to really drain your noodles when you make this recipe. So I'm just going to break that Velveeta up. You know, makes it melt a little bit quicker. You don't have to do that, but it reduces the chance of burning the cheese. So you can see here that I'm breaking it up into maybe like 4 or 5 little pieces, and then just putting it back on the heat. And you never really want to turn that up over a quarter. So we're just going to keep on keeping on here. You're going to make sure you stir these noodles a lot, because if you don't, they'll stick to the pan when you're using a little bit of water like I'm doing. That's just kind of something you have to pay attention to. And every so often you want to scrape that bottom, because sometimes they'll start sticking to the bottom. But the main thing you want to do is you don't want to overheat them. I start them out on high, and then I reduce this all the way down to about half. So I come back over here and I'm just going to kind of scrape the bottom. They've been cooking for a total of about 10 minutes now. And we end up with perfect noodles. I taste one there. Got to make sure it's just about al dente. Because remember, they're going to boil a little bit more when they're in the pan. So you get that pan scraped really good. And I use a 9x13 cake pan. I like glass because you don't get any metallic flavors in it or anything. And remember, I coated it with that olive oil Pam. That's real important. Now you can rub butter in the pan instead of the olive oil Pam. You're not really going to cook it long enough to make some sort of brown crust. So, you might just enjoy the flavor more. That works too. Just make sure you coat the whole thing. You don't miss any spots or it's going to stick. Okay, so these guys are done. And we are going to take them and we're just going to give them one last stir and scrape and dump them in the pan. And this is going to look like it's overflowing here. And a lot of people will be like, oh my God, it's going to spill everywhere. But 1 pound of noodles fills a 9x13 cake pan perfectly. And you can mound it up in the middle if you want to. A lot of times if you make it too flat, what happens is the center will kind of drop down. And then you get this kind of sickly looking macaroni and cheese that just doesn't look real appealing. So I like to mound it up in the middle. And by doing that, it makes it look really appealing when people come up and see it. It's just a nice big mound of macaroni and cheese, and you just want to dig right in. So just kind of level it out. And the most important thing here is you don't want to mix your cheese with the macaroni and then pour it in. And a lot of people do that and they make that mistake. Well, what happens is then all your cheese sauce wants to automatically just settle to the bottom. So mix your cheese sauce up, get it looking really good and creamy. Make sure you don't have anything stuck to the bottom. You don't want to lose out. And then you're going to pour that cheese over the top of the noodles. And this is another secret. Like I said, if you pour the cheese into the noodles, stir it all up like you're making regular macaroni and cheese in a box, and then pour it in the pan. As it bakes, all your cheese sauce is going to sink to the bottom of that pan, and you're going to get a layer at the bottom of the pan where the cheese sauce is all coagulated, and then the top layer of the noodles are going to be really dry and not have a lot of cheese on them. And that's just, it's not appealing to look at, really. Once you serve it and stir it all up, that's fine, but you kind of want this to look appealing too when you put it out on the plate. I got that on 400 preheated, fully to 400 convection. I want to make sure that thing's beeped and that it is at full temperature, because this is only going to be in there for 15 minutes. And then once you get that cheese to the perfect consistency, which is just, obviously it's beautiful and cheesy and there's a lot of it. It also looks like, oh my gosh, it's going to overflow. But as you put this cheese on the noodles, just kind of poke the noodles and move the noodles around, and then make like a little hollow in the middle. And, kind of give them some pokes, and that cheese is going to find its way right down in there. But when you bake this, the cheese is going to stay on top. And that's the most important thing, is you want that cheese to stay on top. You don't want it to all sink to the bottom in a layer. And so that's what I do. I just kind of go down and rake it through a little, but try to keep a lot of it on top. I know it sounds weird. It's so tempting to just stir it up so it's perfectly blended and mixed up, but that's a no-no. That's why when you have macaroni and cheese, it's just incredibly delicious. It's been done this way. It hasn't been done by pre-mixing the macaroni and cheese. Unless you're not going to bake it. If you're not going to bake it, of course, you can do it that way. So I always put these on an insulated aluminum pan, and that just captures any of the stuff that might drip off the sides. But you'll be real surprised that this stuff doesn't bubble so much because it only cooks for 15 minutes, and it doesn't really spill over a lot. So 1.5. Set that timer. Go have yourself a drink, and then come on back. Now I'm going to do this a little dicey. I got in the middle of this, and then I started to realize I should have used two hands, but I'm going to try to be a professional here and do it one-handed, and you'll see just why I was kind of thinking about, bam, oh crap, you spill that, man, you're going to be cleaning for weeks. So look at that. It's just beautiful. It's still bubbling, it's oozing, just cheese just everywhere on top. You don't have a bunch of dry noodles on top. Super appealing, little brown tips on all the noodles. So just kind of go around and check it, see how it separates from the pan, hit the middle, take a look, make sure that you got cheese all the way through. Really doesn't take much to do this. And then of course taste it. It's hot as can be. Make sure you blow on it. But you will be richly rewarded. Again, most of my recipes that I'm showing you on the channel here are ones I've been making my whole life. I'm 55 years old. I've been cooking since I was about 12. And this macaroni and cheese, I think probably the first time I made it was in high school. And I would make a whole pan of this stuff, and I would just eat it all in one day. And you'll want it too. It's really good. Thanks for watching, guys. Enjoy.